Hey everyone, Linus here, and today we're diving deep into the world of software quality assurance, specifically test planning. We're talking about the difference between a smooth launch and a bug-ridden nightmare. Let's get started. Alright, before we even think about writing a single line of code, we need to figure out what we're actually testing for. This is where establishing clear test objectives comes in. Think of it like setting a destination for a road trip. If you don't know where you're going, you'll just end up driving in circles. So, what are our goals? Are we trying to make sure the software functions as expected? Are we focused on performance, security, or usability? Maybe it's all of the above. The key here is to be specific and measurable. Instead of just saying we want to test if the software works, we need to define what working actually means. Does it mean the user can successfully log in? Does it mean the data is processed accurately? The more specific our objectives, the more focused our testing will be. Remember, these objectives should align with the overall quality goals of the project. If the project stakeholders are all about security, our test objectives better reflect that. By clearly defining our test objectives, we're essentially creating a roadmap for our testing efforts. This sets the foundation for a successful testing process and ultimately a higher quality software product. Okay, we've got our objectives locked in. Now it's time to define our scope. This is where we get granular and specify exactly what we're testing. Think of it like drawing a circle around all the features, components, and modules that need to be put through the ringer. But it's not just about what we're testing, it's also about how much we're testing. Are we doing a full system test or focusing on specific areas? This is where we need to be strategic. We've got limited time and resources, so we need to make sure we're focusing on the areas that matter most. First things first, we need to consider both functional and non-functional requirements. Functional requirements are all about what the software is supposed to do. Can the user create an account? Can they upload a file? Non-functional requirements, on the other hand, are all about how the software performs. Is it fast? Is it secure? Is it easy to use? Both are equally important for delivering a great user experience. Once we have a clear understanding of the requirements, we can start mapping them to specific test cases. This helps us ensure that we're covering all our bases and not missing any critical functionality. By clearly defining our test scope, we're essentially drawing a line in the sand. All right, we've set our objectives, defined our scope. Now it's time to get real about risks. Every project has them, and testing is no exception. We need to identify potential problems before they become major headaches. Think of it like this. We're playing software detective, looking for clues that might lead to a bug-infested disaster. And just like a good detective, we need to prioritize. Not all risks are created equal. Some are more likely to occur than others, and some will have a bigger impact if they do rear their ugly heads. So how do we figure out what to focus on? We need to assess the likelihood and impact of each risk. A high likelihood, high impact risk is a big deal. It's like a ticking time bomb that we need to defuse ASAP. A low likelihood, low impact risk, on the other hand, is less of a concern. Once we've identified and assessed our risks, we can start prioritizing our testing efforts. We want to focus our time and resources on the areas that pose the greatest threat to the project. By proactively identifying and mitigating risks, we're essentially building a safety net for our project. We're reducing the likelihood of encountering major issues down the line and increasing our chances of delivering a high-quality product. All right, we've got our objectives, scope, and risks figured out. Now it's time to choose our weapon, or, in our case, our test approach. This is where we decide how we're going to tackle this testing beast. Are we going in with a waterfall method, a more agile approach, or maybe a hybrid of the two? Each approach has its own strengths and weaknesses, so it's important to choose the one that best aligns with our project needs, constraints, and available resources. Let's start with the classic waterfall approach. This is like a well-structured queue at the bank. Each testing phase follows the previous one in a linear fashion. It's great for projects with well-defined requirements and a stable scope, but it can be a bit rigid if things change along the way. Then we've got the agile approach, which is more like a free-flowing mosh pit. It's all about flexibility, collaboration, and adapting to change. Testing is integrated throughout the development process, allowing us to identify and address issues early on. The key here is to choose an approach that allows us to test effectively and efficiently. By carefully considering our options and choosing the right test approach, we're setting ourselves up for success. All right, we've got our plan of attack. Now it's time to build our battle station, or in our case, our test environment. This is where the magic happens, where we put our software through its paces. But it's not just about having a bunch of computers lying around. We need to make sure our test environment closely resembles the production environment as much as possible. Think of it like this. We're building a movie set. We want it to look and feel like the real deal, so our actors, or in this case our software, can perform at their best. So what do we need to consider? First up, hardware. Do we need powerful servers to handle a heavy load? Do we need specific mobile devices to test our mobile app? Then there's software. What operating systems, databases, and libraries do we need to install? And let's not forget about network configuration. Do we need to simulate different network speeds or latency issues? Getting the environment right is crucial. If our test environment doesn't accurately reflect the production environment, we risk missing critical bugs that could pop up when the software goes live. Once we have our environment set up, we need to choose the right tools for the job. By carefully planning our test environment and selecting the right tools, we're creating a solid foundation for our testing efforts. All right, we've got our objectives, scope, risks, approach, and environment all sorted out. Now it's time to assemble our dream team, or in our case, allocate our test resources. This is where we identify and gather everything we need to execute our master plan. We're talking about the people, the budget, the equipment, and the facilities. Think of it like planning a heist. We need the right crew, the right tools, and the right hideout to pull it off successfully. First up, personnel. Who's going to do the testing? Do we have dedicated testers on staff, or do we need to outsource? What skills and experience do we need? Then there's the budget. How much money do we have to spend on testing? This will determine what tools we can afford, whether we can hire external help, and how much time we can dedicate to testing. And let's not forget about equipment. Do we need specialized testing devices? Do we need to purchase additional software licenses? These costs can add up quickly, so it's important to factor them into our budget. By carefully allocating our resources, we're ensuring that our testing team has everything they need to do their job effectively. So there you have it, folks. We've covered the essential elements of a solid test plan. Remember, a well-defined plan is like having a superpower in the world of software development. It helps us avoid costly mistakes, streamlines the testing process, and ultimately leads to a better product. There are tons of resources available online, including templates, checklists, and best practices. The most important thing is to get started and make testing an integral part of your development workflow. Trust me, your users will thank you for it.